At 1:43 in the morning, your phone acquires a 7-step Korean skincare routine, a map to a bakery in Lisbon, and a quote about discipline you captured while refusing to go to sleep. None of these things will ever meet again. The routine sinks beneath a parking receipt, the bakery gets buried by a meme about lower back pain, and the discipline quote survives forever in a folder holding 4,812 other tiny rectangles, like a motivational cave painting sealed behind a landslide. You're not stupid, you know the odds, and somewhere inside you a small committee has already accepted that the miso butter mushroom pasta is never getting made. Yet the thumb and the side button perform the sacred squeeze anyway. Because the screenshot was never really a promise to use the information, it was a receipt proving that for 1 second, you became the person who might. Here's why you take screenshots and then never look at them again. Capturing something gives your brain permission to stop remembering before you built any reason to return to it. That squeeze solves a real problem. The problem just isn't the one you think it is. Your brain is always carrying unfinished business. Reply to that message, buy toothpaste, look up that book. Try that stretch. Find out why octopuses punch fish. Every open intention asks for a scrap of attention, and attention is a small campsite with far too many people trying to sit near the fire. Psychologists Risko and Sam Gilbert use the term cognitive offloading for actions that change the outside world so the brain has less work to do. Writing a list, turning a pill bottle upside down after taking it, leaving your keys by the door, rotating a map instead of doing the rotation in your head, setting an alarm called takes chicken out, and then feeling personally attacked when it rings. All of it counts. The phone didn't invent any of this. Human thinking has probably always spilled past the skull. Fingers help us count. Marks preserve quantities, trails hold navigation, and other people remember the names, stories, seasons, and grudges that one brain can't carry alone. Culture, among other things, works like a group project in external memory where half the participants are dead. A screenshot fits neatly into that old habit. The moment something looks useful, you move it out of fragile biological memory and into the environment, and the brain no longer has to keep repeating, blue tile bathroom, blue tile bathroom, blue tile bathroom. Because the idea now lives in a glowing rock. One of the few studies to look at screenshotting itself shows how many jobs that glowing rock has picked up. Human-computer interaction researcher Aske Mottelson asked 52 people in 2023 to share screenshots from their phones and explain why they'd taken each one. 1,679 screenshots came back. 9 broad themes emerged: health, learning, documentation, technical support, inspiration and planning, capturing the moment, bookmarks, shopping, and social use. Bookmarking turned out to be the most frequent theme, and screenshots pulled from social media apps made up less than 40% of the entire collection, which means this isn't mainly a gossip habit, and it isn't a symptom of poor organization either. It's an improvised filing system doing 9 jobs while dressed up as a photograph. The research backs this up. Offloading works. In experiments led by Sam Gilbert, people could set external reminders for delayed intentions, and those reminders improved performance. People also leaned on reminders more when they felt less confident in their own memory, even when that feeling didn't match their actual ability. Because the choice to save is guided partly by a private forecast, future me will absolutely forget this. Future you hears that accusation and frankly has no defense. Saving can even help you learn whatever comes next. Benjamin Storm and Sean Stone gave people files to study. When participants saved one file before learning another, their memory for the new material improved because parking the first set of information outside the brain reduced interference. That only held, though, when people believed the saving system was reliable and the old information was demanding enough to get in the way. The humble save button, in other words, can clear the mental table, and that's not a defect, that's good cognitive housekeeping. Here's where it turns. Rebecca Lurie, Sophia Fabrizio, and Danae Westerman published 3 experiments in 2025 where people viewed artwork and either saved it by photographing it, saved it with a screenshot, or simply looked at it. In their first study, recognition averaged about 76% among people who just viewed the art, and that number fell to 63% after taking a photo and dropped further to 54% after taking a screenshot. The simplest saving method produced the biggest memory loss. Divided attention couldn't explain the whole effect either, since the screenshot condition took roughly the same amount of time as simply viewing the artwork. The act of preserving the image seemed to tell the brain it no longer needed to preserve the image itself. Linda Henkel found a related effect during a museum tour years earlier. People remembered fewer objects and fewer details when they photographed whole objects than when they only observed them. Zooming in on one specific detail changed that result, which makes sense since choosing a detail forces you to look, while a quick full-frame capture lets the camera do the looking for you. None of this makes the camera a memory destruction ray. Alixandra Barasch and her colleagues found that when people freely chose what to photograph, they later remembered more of what they'd seen, although they remembered less of what they'd heard. Selection changed attention. Deciding what deserved a photograph made people look more closely at the visual world in front of them. The difference then isn't camera versus no camera. It's selection versus delegation. Betsy Sparrow, Jenny Liu, and Daniel Wegner found another version of this same bargain in their research on internet access. When people expected information to stay available on a computer, they became less likely to remember the information itself, and better able to remember where to find it. The human memory system isn't simply weakening here, it's changing what it chooses to store. There's little reason to memorize the berry patch when you can remember the path instead. Little reason to carry every story when you already know which elder tells it, and little reason to encode the restaurant's name when the exact post survives, the one where a stranger with very white teeth called the noodles life-changing. Your brain allocates effort based on future access, and that's sensible, efficient, and slightly disastrous all at once. Remembering where information lives only helps if you have a usable route back to it, and somewhere in photos is not a route. It's the digital equivalent of telling a rescue team the missing hiker is on Earth. This is the capture cue gap. The information survives, but the cue that would make it useful doesn't. A screenshot feels like an external reminder, but most screenshots contain no reminder at all. There's no time attached, no place, no next action, and no decision about whether the thing matters more than the 200 other things captured that same week. The image leaves working memory, lands in storage, and becomes almost perfectly safe from ever being used. That's the core reversal. You don't forget to use screenshots because saving failed, you forget because saving succeeded at making your brain let go. The screenshot performs a second trick too. It converts an unfinished desire into a finished motion. An interesting recipe creates a little demand of its own. Learn this, buy ingredients, cook it, risk producing a beige swamp, wash the pan. A screenshot reduces that entire chain to one clean motor act. Click. The image flashes, a thumbnail drops into the corner, and the phone confirms possession. For a fraction of a second, I should do this becomes handled. Researchers E.J. Massacampo and Roy Baumeister studied what unfinished goals do to attention, and in their experiments, unfulfilled goals could intrude on unrelated tasks. Making a specific plan for a goal reduced that interference, and while the plan didn't finish the goal, it gave the mind permission to stop rehearsing it. A screenshot isn't a specific plan, though. Someday, this carries no when, no where, and no first step. Yet it may imitate the emotional shape of a plan just well enough to quiet the thought. That's an inference on my part, not something those researchers actually tested, but it fits the experience. Before the screenshot, the idea feels loose and urgent, and afterward, it feels owned. Owned is not scheduled. This is why the folder fills with possible selves. There's the body you might build, represented by 12 mobility drills and a man doing lunges beside an infinity pool. A couch that costs more than your bloodline has earned since agriculture began stands in for the home you might create. 47 books, summarized in brightly colored carousels, represent the mind you might develop. The emotionally mature person you might become shows up too, as a paragraph you plan to send during some future argument, possibly from a bunker. The content matters, but so does what capturing it says about you right now. I am a person who notices good ideas. I care about health. I am planning a trip. I will one day understand taxes. A screenshot lets you rent that identity for almost no cost, giving you the warm glow of selection without the colder experience of doing the selected thing badly for the first 6 weeks. Some screenshots have less to do with becoming someone and more to do with holding the world still. Digital information is oddly slippery. A price changes, a post gets edited, a message gets unsent, and a story vanishes after 24 hours because apparently human communication needed the stability of a mayfly. Even permanent posts arrive through a feed that may never show you the same thing twice. Under those conditions, the screenshot works as a tiny act of control. You're not merely remembering where something is, you're taking custody of it. The app can hide the post, the creator can delete it. The airline can redesign the page at the exact moment you reach security, but your flat little copy stays put. That can be genuinely protective. Screenshots preserve payment records, harassment, changing promises, and information you need once the original signal disappears, letting a person say, "No, that really happened," in situations where the evidence itself can be erased remotely. The same impulse for control also feeds the pile, though. Anything unstable starts to feel worth collecting. A joke might vanish. A useful tip might become impossible to relocate. A pair of shoes could sell out, and a message might matter during an argument that hasn't happened yet, but has already hired lawyers in your head. The safest response, naturally, is to capture everything. This creates a strange kind of ownership. You don't own the shoes, understand the advice, or remember the quote. You own a picture of the possibility. Possession of physical objects usually comes after effort. Find it, carry it, trade for it, protect it. But possession of digital objects comes first, and the effort gets rescheduled for a future date that keeps moving. A screenshot, then, ends up serving as memory, evidence, insurance, identity, and emotional sedative all at once, which is a lot of jobs for 2 buttons and a brief flash. Digital hoarding research offers a cautious clue here. Nick Neve and colleagues surveyed 282 people and found that digital hoarding was associated with indecisiveness and compulsive acquisition, and that photos and videos often carried strong emotional attachment. None of that means a messy screenshot folder qualifies as a disorder. Most clutter is just clutter. But it does suggest that digital files can pick up emotional weight even though they weigh nothing in the hand. Another reason is painfully simple. Saving postpones a decision. When a post might be useful, you could stop and judge it right there, whether the source is credible, whether it solves a problem you actually have, what you'd even do with it, whether a simple breakfast is really simple if it needs preserved lemon, a mandolin, and emotional access to joy. Judgment costs effort. Capture costs a thumb movement. The phone offers a third option between use it and lose it, keep it without deciding. That option feels free, so the brain buys it again and again, and the price shows up later in a camera roll, where finding one warranty number requires an archaeological dig through 6 months of accidental lock screen captures. Here's the nasty arithmetic. Each individual screenshot costs almost nothing, so none of them gets a serious decision, and the collection eventually turns expensive, but that cost gets spread across thousands of future searches. The moment of capture collects the reward, and the future inbox gets stuck with the bill. Our minds notice a cost that happens right now far more easily than a vague tax charged to a stranger called me next month. A pebble in your pocket turns annoying after 20 steps, but a pebble added to cloud storage stays weightless even after it becomes a quarry. Calling this hoarding every time would be dramatic. Clinical hoarding disorder is serious, and a swollen photo library isn't automatically its pixelated cousin. A 2026 review by Natalia Bravo Adasmi, Alejandro Cataldo, and Elizabeth Grandon turned up only 36 publications examining digital hoarding and digital possessions, half of them quantitative, and researchers still haven't landed on one agreed definition of digital hoarding. Which is why the caution here isn't decorative. The research is young, most studies rely on self-report, and correlation can't tell us which factor causes which. Stress may lead to more saving, clutter may produce more stress, and both may get fed by some third problem entirely. There's also a boring objection, which is often the best kind. People take screenshots because screenshots are useful. That part is simply true. Boarding passes, payment confirmations, addresses, evidence of a strange message, the exact model number of a washing machine part, these are all excellent things to store, and external memory aids can genuinely improve daily functioning. For someone with memory impairment, a reliable digital reminder isn't evidence of decline. It can protect independence instead. Even the ridiculous screenshots hold value. A joke sent to a friend creates connection. An old conversation preserves a piece of a relationship, and a photograph can become a cue that brings back details you'd otherwise lose. None of this research claims cameras erase memory or that saving poisons the brain. It says the method of capture changes what gets encoded, and storage only helps once retrieval actually happens. That distinction matters, because the problem isn't too much external memory. Human beings are external memory creatures by design. The real problem is that we built the fastest acquisition system in history and bolted it onto one of the slowest decision-making systems in nature. For most of human existence, keeping information came with friction. A useful plant had to be recognized again, demonstrated, named, folded into a story, or carried back to somebody who already knew what to do with it. A mark took time to make, an object took up space, and a knowledgeable person needed feeding and could wander off after an argument about fish. Information stayed social and tied to context. The river bends here, the tubers grow after that rain, the red berries are food, and the almost identical red berries make the afternoon extremely educational. Useful knowledge stayed close to action because survival kept asking follow-up questions. Modern feeds remove nearly every one of those old limits at once. They produce more potentially useful information in an hour than anyone could test in a month. The cost of copying it sits near zero. The cost of keeping it stays hidden. The source disappears from context, and the algorithm just keeps pouring. Your nervous system meets that abundance with a rule that's hard to fault. When something valuable might disappear, preserve it now and sort it out later. We should stay careful with the evolutionary story here. There's no known screenshot gene, and natural selection didn't prepare some special thumb circuit for saving a stranger's list of 5 signs you are secretly dehydrated. The best we can say is that screenshotting recruits older abilities, spotting possible value, avoiding loss, storing information outside the head, and putting off costly choices when the cheap option sits right there. Those abilities made sense in environments where useful information stayed scarce. Storage demanded real effort and later arrived with built-in queues. A tool sat where the work happened, a trail existed in a place, and a story returned around a fire with the people who knew why it mattered. Now the queue is a silent rectangle sitting among thousands of other silent rectangles. That gap counts as an evolutionary mismatch, a set of flexible, once useful tendencies operating inside conditions radically different from the ones that shaped them. The old problem was losing valuable information. The new problem is preserving so much information that value can no longer find you. Your thing can hold the gathering dreams of a whole tribe, every shelter, every remedy, every attractive stranger, every route, every meal, every warning, every tool. The whole pile gets compressed behind a flower-shaped icon, and a red badge flashes because your cloud storage is nearly full. The brain succeeded, the environment cheated. This also explains why shame does so little good here. Telling yourself to be more disciplined treats the screenshot folder as proof that you lack willpower. Yet most of the behavior comes from a reasonable system responding to warped prices. Capture is instant, evaluation is slow, storage stays invisible, future usefulness stays uncertain, loss feels irreversible, and the feed vanishes on command. Under those rules, save now wins every time. Changing the rules works better than insulting the player. If a screenshot is meant for action, attach the action while the idea is still alive. Put the restaurant in a map list, add the event to a calendar, send the recipe to a note called "Cook This Week" instead of recipes. A vast digital cemetery where lentils go to die. Give it a date, a place, a person, or a first step. That turns a captured intention into an actual retrieval queue. If the image works as reference material, make it searchable, since a short label beats faith in future scrolling. If it's a keepsake, let it stay a keepsake, because not every saved thing needs to turn into a self-improvement project. The joke can just be funny, the sunset can just be pretty, and your camera roll doesn't need a quarterly performance review. If you can't even name what the screenshot is for, notice what you might actually be buying instead. Relief from deciding, protection from forgetting, or a 5-second membership in some future identity. Sometimes that's all the capture was ever meant to provide. The goal was never to force yourself to use every saved item, since that would turn a cluttered phone into a labor contract written by your past self, who was apparently planning to cook 6 dinners a night and develop the hip mobility of a leopard. The kinder move is to stop treating capture as commitment. A screenshot says, "This caught my attention," and nothing more. It doesn't say you owe the internet a completed project. It doesn't prove you're lazy when you never return to it. And it doesn't become a moral debt just because a thumbnail exists somewhere. Your collection works as a fossil record of attention. What frightened you, what amused you, what tempted you, and what briefly offered a better version of tomorrow. Most fossils never come back to life. The 7-step skincare routine can stay right where it is, beneath the parking receipt. The bakery in Lisbon can wait forever under the lower back meme, and the discipline quote can keep its place in that sealed cave with 4,812 companions, each one marking the exact same human act. You saw possible value, you feared losing it, and you moved the memory outside yourself and kept walking. That's the real question worth sitting with on your own, whether screenshots make up a useful memory system or whether they're just procrastination wearing a camera shutter. If you want to keep understanding why your brain and body do things that stopped making sense somewhere along the way, subscribe, because there's a lot more of this coming.